You're listening to Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal with Matthew Taub.
My name is Matt Taub. This is Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal. I've got an exceptionally amazing guest today, on our show today. All the way from Australia, well, London, then Australia, but Australia right now, we've got Amanda Goff. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction about Amanda. I love this. I got from her about her on her website. I'm best-selling author, a journalist, former escort, business owner, and coach. I hold a certificate in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I'm a regular media personality. This is my story. Now let me help you with yours. I love that. Amanda, that's such an amazing, just boom. That's me. There's a lot of me. Now let's hear your story. So Let's hear your story. Introduce yourself, Amanda. And again, thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks. It's an honor to be on your podcast, especially because you're based in Canada, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I don't want to say America because I know that offends Canadians. So
Don't tell the Americans that.
No, don't tell the Americans that. So I won't. Yes. So I was a journalist for many years. I grew up in London, and I moved to Australia in my mid-20s. I'm in my late 40s now. And after I met a guy, had a couple of kids, a successful journalist, and then in a cut a long story very short, I ditched the 9-to-5, the journalism, and I became a high class, what one would call a high class escort in Sydney. And I wrote 2 best-selling books about my stories. And that's pretty much it. That was it. And then it all sort of crumbled. And I am now sober and I've changed my life around. So that's it in a very, very few sentences. But of course, there's a lot more to it. So I was a journalist, became an escort, quite well known for it, got sober, stopped working.
Okay. There's a lot there we'll unpack.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. So like I said before, whenever I talk to people about their recovery, so many things that I've spoken to about people, huge things or minor things that became huge, changing their life once they became part of the sobriety, the sober community, and recovery is part of their life, that all these crazy things, amazing things happen, crazy things in their life. You've had so many things. You've had the changes. You did the journalist, the escort, and now. So it's like you've got these stories. The sobriety is a huge part of it. So let's dive into, because what you're doing now, I want to talk a bit about it now. We'll talk about it a bit afterwards. What we're doing now with your coaching business and your NLP and everything you're doing there ties into a bit of what you've learned over your career.
Yes, as an escort and a journalist. Yeah. And my addiction, which was basically champagne, cocaine, the party lifestyle, that really wasn't about my jobs. It was about my personal life. And, I created a character called Samantha X, who became Australia's most notorious escort in the media. But that obviously wasn't who I really was. That was just a mask I had. And Samantha, I've always said, saved my life because, for work, for clients, I had to be the fun, exciting, happy, engaged woman. Whereas behind closed doors, Amanda, that's when I could fall apart. And that's when my addiction really took hold. Because my clients, people probably think it's the other way around, but my clients, all they drank was water, really. I never did drugs or drank a lot with my clients at all. Right. Be horrified, and they were quite horrified to know that I did do that in my real life. But like addiction and our habits they're a symptom of something a lot deeper. And I was really struggling.
Okay, so how long have you been sober for now?
So I haven't had alcohol for 4 years, and I haven't had drugs for 2. I find it really hard to say that my sobriety is 2 years because I think yes, but I haven't had alcohol for 4 years. That's a resentment I need to get over. But I guess officially in 12-step program talk, I've been sober and clean for 2 years.
Okay. And it's a hard one. I talk about this with everybody that I've been interviewing. That's such a gray area of I spoke to somebody yesterday who I know very, very well. I've been drug-free for 20 years.
You have?
No, somebody I interviewed. And said he's been alcohol free for 5. So it's like that word, like, but he only drank wine at events. It wasn't like a big thing. I mean,
Right.
I've been sober. Alcohol was my big thing. I was sober for just over 17 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely fun, and we've enveloped the whole family as part of it. The kids, we joke about it. I'm probably at times the anti-sober person, because part of this is my wife points out to me. I am still the enabler. Where if somebody's glass is half full, I will top it up. You want more? Okay. You don't want more? You sure want more? And they're like, are you drinking through me? I'm like, I guess. So it's crazy. So you've been 4 years for cocaine and 2 years for alcohol. Now, what was
the other way around?
Sorry,
4 years for alcohol, 2 years cocaine. But when I say 2 years cocaine, I mean I did a thimble full of cocaine. It's a thimble full of cocaine, and that I have so much resentment about that incident. And I'm like, fuck, I can't believe this is taking me back to day one. It wasn't even worth it. It wasn't like I had a mad party and went on a binge for a week and got up to all sorts. I had a piddling amount of cocaine that as soon as I did it, I thought, why the fuck did I do that?
Right.
And I spoke to my sponsor the next day and I was like, I'm back at day one. And I was like, yes, but I haven't had alcohol for 4 years. But
it's a hard one. You had those for the 2 years prior. So it's one of those, it's like a blip. It doesn't take away.
Yes.
And I've spoken to people about this as well. It doesn't take away the 2 years prior. They don't wash away.
Yes.
So it's 4 years in a blip.
That's right.
It's 4 years. And
4 years. I like that, Matt. I'm going to say 4 years in a blip.
It's 4 years in a blip because people do. They kind of get in that rut where you have that 2 years. You have that moment. It's a night. It's a thimble. It's tiny. And it seems like that tiny little moment washes away 2 years, but it doesn't. You still had 2 years.
That's right. Yes.
So that's how I see it. It's more of like, as long as that, one day didn't become, 17 years.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I look at it that way. So it kind of changes that resentment, hopefully.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So when you reached that point, what was your turning point for wanting to get sober? What was it that kind of triggered that moment?
I think sheer desperation. I'd sort of tried everything else. I tried not drinking. I tried not going out. I tried self-will. I tried justifying it in my head, and nothing really worked. And look, I wasn't the one that suggested. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that you're not supposed to say, but this is a recovery podcast. So I didn't want to go to a meeting. My best friend actually said, you're going. I remember standing in a hotel room in Melbourne, looking out the window, realizing that that's why they closed the windows of hotels, because they didn't want people like me jumping out when they're hungover and feel shit, and the guilt and the shame and the remorse and all of that. So I went to my first meeting in Melbourne, and I'd love to say it was, happy ever since, but I went there thinking they're full of weirdos and this is some kind of cult, and they're all real alcoholics and I'm not. That's that they went, they've been in prison, they've been in hospital. So I was quite high functioning. And in a way that's worse, because I hadn't lost everything and I hadn't lost really anything. I was just slowly dying.
Yeah.
There was nothing tangible. I couldn't say I lost my kids because I didn't. I didn't have a car accident. I didn't do any of that stuff. But spiritually, I was dead. And that's what I started to recognize in the stories, was not the similarities of hospitals and life support, because I couldn't relate to that, or jails.
Yeah.
It was the emotional pain that people were in. And that's what I related to. And that's what's kept me there.
Good. I was going to talk about the why in a second. So that's you. But it's true. And I tried AA and it didn't. There's different programs for different people.
100%. There's lots of ways to get sober.
Yeah. So when I did my AA, and I remember I went multiple times to different places, and just none of them worked for me. And mine, again, I didn't have any DUIs. I didn't have any, there was no arrest. I reached a rock bottom. And it was like, I knew my last night of drinking was my last night of drinking.
Right. So how did you get sober then?
I got sober. Well, my wife found me passed out on the kitchen floor. So that there was a real rock bottom.
Yes.
And that was the last night I drank. So what happened was I told the nanny she can go home. A friend of mine dropped me off, told the nanny she can go home, put our 1.5-year-old to bed. So I gave him a bath.
Yeah.
Woke up on the kitchen floor and I didn't remember putting him to bed. That was my moment.
Yes.
That was it. Didn't drink that was December 20th. I didn't have a drink at all. I've not since that day. But I ended up going to a program that I got into, like a 21-day program in February.
Like a rehab?
Yeah, a rehab program in February. So I actually went 2 months of cold turkey not drinking.
Yes.
Went to a weekly meeting to get into this other program. I remember staying in the program when I finally got into it, and it was a live-in, and I don't do anything. I'm a big person where I think, go big or go home. I got permission to not live in. So I still had a business. My wife and I had a gym. So I trained my clients from 4:30 in the morning till 8. Then I'd go to rehab for the day. Then I'd go back to train my clients. Then I'd go home and, repeat it. And it was such an eye-opener to do that. And I think that actually helped me stay so raw as doing it. But I remember the very first day, when you're sitting there looking at all these other people who were broken with different things. My group wasn't just alcoholics. There were heroin addicts. There were about 10 guys, and only 3 of us drank. And I remember turning around going, I feel like a loser. Like I'm the only, nobody drinks anymore. Everyone's doing everything else.
Properly, yeah.
I'm like, I feel like the loser of the group. You guys do cool stuff. And then
it's so 1990, man.
Right? It's like, come on. And then from there it was just learning the steps. And for me, it was finding out my why. My why was, why did I do it? My traumas. What did I need to do? I remember when I came out of the program, I sat there going to everybody, you need to go to this program. It's so good. Like I learned so much about myself. So that was my program. So my why became, I know why I was drinking, and then it became, I know why I don't want to anymore. So my why is always those two combined. So when you got in there, you're broken spiritually. So
yeah, it's broken. Like I completely relate to what you were saying. Like I sat in the meetings and thought, I don't drink like these people. I'm very much a party girl. I'm not an everyday drinker, a morning drinker, or I'm just a party. And I just thought, I live in an area of Sydney which is very much young people and beach and party, and everyone's like me. And I thought, everyone's like me. Why am I here? But the more times I put my bum on the seat and listen to the stories, the more I had in common with these people. And I wasn't better than, I was the same as. I started to see the effects of non-drinking. A day became a week became a month became 3 months, blah, blah. And my life started to improve. And I say to people, if you don't think you've got a problem with alcohol, try stopping.
Yeah.
And if your life doesn't change, then you probably didn't. But if my life changed completely.
Yeah. And it's a big change. If you get, I think I posted the other day, to get an idea of what, the addiction's like, put your phone down for 24 hours.
That's right. I saw that. That was very good. Yeah.
And
it's true. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yes.
It's really to put it up 24 hours. So you've gone through this, you've gone through a 12-step program.
Yes.
And it worked well.
It works. Look, we say in the program, it works if you work it. It's not just enough to go to meetings and scroll your phone and half listen but I am not very good at recovery. Sometimes I dip in and dip out, and I'm not to say I relapse all the time, but I decide I don't want to do meetings anymore, that everyone's weird, that I don't need, I get complacent about my sobriety. I don't know whether you do too. You've got 17 years up. There's a complacency for me that I don't drink anymore. But it can catch me unawares. Sometimes I'll be at a bar. Well, I'm not really a bar because I don't go out anymore, but sometimes I can think, I can have one, what's the big deal of having one? And then I just have to forward play it in my head. Right.
You know how that movie ends. You've seen that movie before.
I've got enough evidence to back up the fact that it will be an utter disaster.
Yeah, so that's a big one. And I think that's for a lot of people. And I get complacent at times. I can sit there. And there are times I've actually forgotten that I don't drink. Not that I'll go and order a drink, but just, and for a long time, I would say to people, oh, I just don't drink. There was never a label attached to it.
Yes.
You know, I self-medicated. I wasn't an alcoholic.
Do you say that?
Yeah, I would always say I self-medicated. Not
Right.
that, you know, it was the word alcoholic for me was a hard word to say. So
Yes,
I
I
say
agree
it
with
more
you.
often now, but that's what it was. And even when I did my after program, when I did my rehab, we had to do a weekly program where I called up the therapist who ran it. I said, I can't come back anymore. I'm done. I can't.
Right.
Half the room goes in week after week. Oh, I had a bad weekend. My mom yelled at me, and I'm like, I can't. It was done. And it was funny, just human nature. But it was set up like almost like a little lecture hall, like a U. And I just went there my very first day, walked one side of the room. It turned out the side of the room that I was on was everybody who had been clean for years. And the other side of the room were the people who kept on relapsing weekly. So I just gravitated to this side of the room. And I'm like, I looked at one guy, I said, how do you do this?
Right.
Oh my God, week after week, they're complaining about the same thing.
Yes.
Like, come on already. So, and again, I just didn't know it wasn't their time yet. Right. So
They hadn't got enough evidence to,
yeah.
They needed to go and do some more research. Whereas I think I'm researched out.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've got my oldest is in his first year of university, and one of his friends was trying to explain what shotgunning the beer was. And I'm like, I don't drink, right? He's like, yeah. You know why, right? Yeah, I said, you don't have to explain anything related to.
Did they see you drunk, the kids, ever?
Pardon me?
Did the kids see you drunk ever?
My kids have never. So my oldest one was the only one who's around at the time, a year and a half. Right. Although I've seen him drunk.
Right.
Right. So, and that question comes up a lot where people will say to me, well, can your kids drink? I'm like, they're going to do it. I can't ban them from it. They're going to have to learn. All I can say is I'm going to be here when it happens, if it happens.
That's right. Yes.
No. I think recently, last year, 2 years ago, I read Rob Lowe, who's been sober for years.
Yeah.
His son was an alcoholic. And right. Rob Lowe was like, listen, he knew I was his whole life. And all I can be is be there for if he needed me. So, we joke about it. Even, my son went to university, his dorm, they're not allowed alcohol, but they all sneak it in anyway. So we bought a little mini fridge for him, and it was me. There I was on my knees. I was the one who was hiding the beer in the mini fridge. And I'm like, does anybody else find this weird? They're like, well, if anybody can hide alcohol.
Yeah. But you're so right. I mean, you can't stop. I mean, I don't talk about my children, but I have children, they're teenagers. And, they're just getting into that phase of drinking and experimentation. And they've seen me drink and they've seen me on the floor. And I've taken them to a few meetings, just babysitting duty sometimes. And all I can hope is that message of sobriety and that there is such thing as recovery, because I didn't know that not drinking was an option. Right. As a 35-year-old something woman or whatever how old I was when I first went to recovery, I didn't know that you didn't have to drink. That wasn't even believable for me.
That wasn't part of the conversation for us growing up.
No.
Not drinking, AA, any of these meetings had such a stigma to it and a negative connotation to it, where I think we're about the same age, so we kind of grew up in a what's that?
I'm 48.
Yeah, I'm 40, so I'm 49. So
I like older men.
so I sit there, and we grew up at an age where it was normal, like
100%.
My thought process getting married was, and I actually built a little mini wet bar out of an old hi-fi record player, because I was going to come home from work and you pour yourself a drink and you sit down and this is what you did. And so that was what I thought was life. Right.
That's right.
Going to meetings, even people now in the sobriety movement, we'll talk about that in a second, but the sobriety movement now is huge. And it's very
fashionable to be sober.
It's much more fashionably sober. And, the amount of people, the companies that are building up these drinks that are 0% alcohol or the mocktails, people ask me, do you ever drink them? I'm like, no, because in my head, it was called near beer. And near beer was scandalous. Means if you had a can of near beer, you had a problem. Means you can't drink. So to me, I'm like, no, I can't have that. Like that's like, so you have problems if you have to drink that. And now it's so changed where that's the culture of being sober and sobriety and talking about mental health and all these things, and these words like triggers, have made us open to talk about it more and have conversations like we're having in podcasts like I'm doing. So you have your why, you've got all your moments. Mm-hmm. Where do we go from there? So in the last 4 years, where have you traveled to in terms of this?
So the more sober I got, now you've got to remember I was sort of working in an industry that was, 5-star hotels, exciting, it's illegal. I'm not sure about Canada, but it's a legal profession in Australia. I was well known. I wrote a lot in the media about escorting, and I really loved my job, and I was making a ridiculous amount of cash. But there was something that still wasn't right, even though I was sober. I was still having the mood swings. I was still really high and still really low. And I always assumed that was alcohol and come downs.
Right.
But I went to my psychologist, and I was then diagnosed with bipolar II. And it was such a revelation for me. Everything I'd done in my life had made sense. I created this character, Samantha, who was so different to me. She was so much more confident. And, I really put myself in the forefront of the media. And when I was diagnosed with bipolar and I was therefore medicated, now I don't mean monged out on lithium, I mean like slightly I was on mood stabilizers. With the sobriety, I started to, and I am in the process of healing, and working as an escort wasn't really serving me anymore, because I feel to be a good escort, you need to disassociate, detach, all those things I could do very well. But the more healthier I became, the harder it was for me to detach and disassociate. Right. So last year, I retired from escorting, and I sort of put Samantha to bed, no pun intended. And I relaunched my career as my real name, Amanda. And I owe sobriety. I really owe the rooms and my 12-step program and sobriety to this huge change, because I would have become one of those women that was washed up, just still spiritually dead, I think, right, if I hadn't found sobriety. Because to me, sobriety is not just about putting the drink or the drug down. It's about healing from within. Mm-hmm. And that, with my medication, getting sober and my medication, that's really paved a new future for me, a future that I didn't think I'd have. And when I used to go to the meetings and I'd hear people say, it's changed my life. I used to be, a singer, doing heroin, and now I'm really happy as an addictions counselor. I'd say This change is never going to happen for me. I'm never going to be able to get out of my industry. I'm never going to be able to get out of it. It's going to happen to other people, but it did happen to me. It is happening to me. So yeah, that's something I owe sobriety to. But it's work in progress. It's work in progress. I'm not going to say this is it forever. It's the temptation to go back to my old life is always there. As the temptation to drink and use is always there.
Right. And that's part of. I've read a lot about, you talked about that, where it is such a challenge to keep going one way. But that's all of us. We have that within us to keep going down that road, right? And go back, and there is the familiarity of it. There's the excitement of it. There's all that.
Yeah, so, exactly. It was like a fast-paced lifestyle, exciting, thrilling. I'd never know who'd be behind the hotel room door. And now my life is very, I have coffees. I have better relationships with my friends, my family, or my sister and my children. But there's a part of me, I won't lie, that misses that thrill, and that and anything could happen. Whereas now my days are very planned and structured, and I guess I'm finally growing up. It's called maturity.
it is a maturity, though, and it's. I was talking to somebody a while back where they said, I would talk to my therapist. I'd be like, it's not right. All my friends are here. They're doing this, and I'm not where they are. And the person said to them, yes, but you're here now. You're where you're supposed to be right now. That's it. So, and everything we've done, there's nothing you would have changed. If you could go back in hindsight, would you change any of it?
No, because like you just said, I truly believe for me, I meant to live this life. I
Right.
sort of knew I was going to change. I was never going to be a 9-to-5 girl. I was never going to have the white picket fence. That was never what I wanted.
Right.
I knew I would do something out of, a bit out of the box, out of the square. I always get my expressions wrong, by the way. And I don't think I would be growing if I hadn't had something to grow from.
Right.
And I think when you live an authentic life and when you're honest about who you are and your failings, where can people go with it? Where like I own who I am. Yes, I became an escort. Yes, I worked in the sex industry. Yes, I was very out and proud about it. Yes, I have bipolar. Yes, I have addictions. I don't regret being honest about any of those things. And if anything, it's been a privilege to help men
Right.
in their time of need, and it's been a privilege to help empower women, because I also coach women, and I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd still be a journalist writing lies about people in magazines and newspapers had I not been on the
Right.
journey up.
Right. You'd be knee deep into Harry and
Harry.
Meghan right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really grateful that I'm not a journalist anymore, because I think I've always said that sex workers have more ethics than most professions.
Generally, it's all there. Like
That's right.
it's all hanging out there. So, but that's amazing. I love that before you got into the industry.
Yeah.
Were you drinking? Were you doing?
Yeah, look, I was using other stuff. I was using sex. I was using. I was eating. I was anorexic after my first child. And I used to be anorexic when I was a kid. I was spending money. I was doing different things. I didn't have access to drugs.
Right.
Drinking was not a big thing for me because I had babies and I was too worried about my weight to drink.
Right. Okay.
But when I sort of changed my life and I was thrust in the media, having written books and, having to deal with being the reality and enormity of being a high profile escort, the facade I had to put on, I guess the pressure of it, I did used to drink alone. And not only because of the job, really, it was more so the pressure from family, it was very, yeah, but it got worse. It got worse and worse and worse. And it was probably, my drinking and using was probably in the height in my early 40s, actually. And then, I'd have coffee in the morning, cocaine and wine at night. Not every night, but enough for it to be a problem.
Right. So all that's occurred, you've learned a lot from being a journalist and being from an escort as well, which now takes you into your healing process now, which is a big part. People don't talk about the healing process. Like, I know that my biggest challenge when I became sober was all the problems that I was avoiding were still there, which no one told me about. Like, hey, by the way, now that you're sober, everything you were avoiding is right there, and now you can't hide behind anything. So there's a lot of growing there that I had to figure out. I had to really figure out how to become an adult, which I think I'm still working on a lot. If you ask my kids, I'm definitely still working on becoming an adult. But then it's also just the being able to look inwards and say, okay, this is who I am, and being able to look in a mirror. I don't think a lot of people realize when one of the hardest things I had to do was look in the mirror when I first became sober, right? And like see myself and see all the things that one of the things that we did was in my program was we had to say the words, all the stigma words and all the shame words that we were taught growing up about alcoholism. I'd say them to myself and go, but you are not this, you are not that. And so the healing was a huge part of it, and getting to know who I was and becoming confident in me. And then being a personal trainer, that did help, because I dealt with people all day long, listening to their problems and, trying to, at the time, fix their problems when I had my own problems.
Yes.
Right. And then once I became, got through recovery, I was able to fix my problems, which then helped me help my clients more. So 100%. As a coach and learning more and doing, courses, NLP and everything else. Let's go there now. So we're out of the sex industry. You're now a coach. You now have your own business. So this is your renewal, essentially, right? We have your recovery, you have your resilience. And I think the resilience is ongoing always, because we're, like you said, you're still healing. There's still so much there. I know that I've got my own traumas I'm still healing from. So where is it that you're going now? Like, what's Amanda doing now?
Well, that's a very good question. And I've got to be okay. Well, I am okay with just sitting in it and not necessarily knowing where I'm going to go now. I don't have a grand plan. I always used to have plans. I was going to do this, write more books. I was going to do. And, I had a business. I had an escort agency. I had an online store for adult toys. I sold lingerie online, and I deleted all. I just canned all of it. I didn't want a part of it anymore. I didn't want to manage women anymore. I didn't want to deal with clients anymore. So the past few months has been a real time for me to heal, and, I'll be honest, I'm feeling, I'm working through some guilt and shame and remorse about what I've done, the enormity of my decisions, the consequences of, it's all very well to say I was a high profile escort, but the reality of that and the judgment and the stigma that still comes with that, not as much, I must say, but it's still there. I'll always be that girl. And I've had to work through that, and I'm healing from that. And then working out what I want to do next, helping. Escorting is, sex work was never about sex. It was about compassion and empathy. And I would still like to help men and women in some capacity, which is why I coach. So concentrate on that, write another book, and who knows, but I don't have to have all the grand plan today.
Right.
I don't have
love
to,
it.
When you do make those plans, something else happens. So,
Exactly. So your coaching business, you're coaching men.
I coach everybody. I coach men and women. Mostly at the moment, women who want to get in or out of the sex industry. And I certainly don't recommend that women, especially young women, go into the industry at all. So, if you're in your late 30s, 40s, and you want to be an escort, then go for it. But for young women, I know for me, in my early 20s, I was not ready to enter such a what's the word? It's a hard industry. You see a side of people that most people don't see. You see a side to men that most people see and don't see, and you need to be prepared for that. And I personally think life experience helps you with that. So I help women transition in or transition out, and men who still need a connection. I just don't have to take my clothes off.
Right.
Which is, believe me, it's a relief for both parties, I think.
But it is a connection, though, right? And that's where you help people out, and that's amazing. And then, within the sober community, within what you've been doing, obviously you talk about it. You talk about it a lot. Is it a big part of your story now?
Well, it is, because it is probably the thing that people find most fascinating about me is not necessarily that I was an escort, is because like every other person has an OnlyFans account these days. I'm certainly special now. But it's the fact that I'm sober, because people who've been following my story for a while, for 10 years, have seen the difference in me. I looked different. I was dead behind the eyes for so long. And, my posts were different. My writing was different. So if people want to know what sobriety is like, I'm living it. I'm showing people what sobriety is like. And a lot of people have contacted me privately saying that they struggle with alcohol and drugs.
I find this amazing whenever I post a lot about it, but when I post about it, the amount of messages I get, and it could be one from, hey, I need some help, to somebody I have not seen in 17 years sent me a message saying, hey, we actually met on vacation a week after I stopped my last drink. Yeah. And I've not seen this person since. We were on vacation, our families met their family, and through Facebook, we've been connected ever since. He sent me a message a few weeks ago saying, I've been following your story, and, last month was my last drink.
Oh, wow.
And it's like those stories, I actually find them overwhelming for me, because as much as I tell my story and I really want to help people, it's like, whoa, like you actually listened.
Yes.
Like so do you find those same messages as well? Like that you're getting like, I think I have a problem, or what you've done has changed me. Do you get overwhelmed by that at all? Or is it just
No. You're a big teddy bear. No, I do. And I feel it's an act of service because people have helped me. you know. And when I was probably at my most desperate, you know, the unconscious on the floor kind of drinking, people were there to hold their hand out for me. So the fact that I can somehow help a stranger, it means the world to me. Yeah, because I'd rather help people in their sobriety journey than, you know, necessarily talk about what perfume to wear or what high heels to wear, you know, or what men like in bed or don't like in bed. That I can help you with as well, girls. But just with, you know, the sobriety thing, that to me, because that's saving someone's life.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
That's save someone's life. And I think, you know, walk the walk, talk the talk. The thing though, Matt, I will say about being public and being sober is that if you relapse, you have to then be public about it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I understand why it's Alcoholics Anonymous. Because
it's anonymous. Have you heard of the app Clubhouse?
No.
Okay, so there's an app that came out right before the pandemic hit. And it's like, imagine Facebook and Instagram with just people talking in different rooms with if you can see their picture, that's it. But everyone, it's like you talk. So you and I can have a room, we can have a conversation with Sobriety, and people come and listen to you and me talk. And then we can invite people, they can raise their hand, and we can invite them to say something, and then we can knock them back down off the stage.
Oh, right, okay,
so that came out right before the pandemic. And I was curious, and they had a sobriety channel. So I started going in there, and they had all these people who were no longer being able to go to live AA meetings were now on this platform. And what amazed me was they were no longer anonymous because their face was there. And in order to register, you had to have your Instagram account attached to it. And not a single person had a problem with it. No. Possibly, I'm thinking because nobody was going to work or because we couldn't leave the house because it was the pandemic. But it was amazing how open and honest people were being because they were half anonymous. You couldn't see them in person. They could say what they wanted to say, but yet I knew while they're talking, I'm scrolling their Instagram feed. I'm looking at who they are. So it was kind of half and half, and it was amazing. Like the anonymous went away from it, and it's hard because, you know, even when I became sober and the program I did, when I first came out about it, I wrote an article for Huffington Post, and right before I sent it out, my wife said, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Because once it's out there, it's public. Yep. Everyone knows your story. I hit enter. Then I went to school to pick up the kids, like 2 hours later. And the first person came up behind me and they said, "I think I have a problem."
Right.
Like, oh my goodness. They go, "I just read your article." But I also didn't know this. The therapist, because I didn't do school pickup a lot, the therapist for my program, her kids went to my kids' school. And she read my post. She came up to me, she's like, "I never knew you were here. Just so you know, like, we knew you were high functioning, but it's so good to see that you're doing this and out there." And she did say the same thing. She goes, if you relapse, it's a big, now it's out there. And I'm like, well, if I relapse, then I have another chapter to my story. So I've actually had to do research and actually almost go through it to know what people are talking about and then point them in the right direction. Because again, there's so many programs. And I've met a lot of people, it's amazing, who just stopped, which I don't understand. Like,
we just stopped drinking without any kind of support. Yeah, those people are amazing.
It's amazing.
But are they? My question is, are they dealing with the reasons why they drank? You know,
probably not.
Yeah.
And that's where I know I was. Mine, like I said, I self-medicated, and I joke around saying, like, I wish I licked the back of toads because I really liked a good craft beer. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really wish it was something else I did that I can't do anymore, but it's what it is. So mine was self-medicating, and that was my big thing. So your coaching, your books, by the way, I've read about 2/3 of the way through your first book, which is.
Oh, really? Have you really?
I wanted to get an idea of your reading, and I would really want what is. What's that?
I would have sent them to you.
Oh, it's all good, but it's like.
Yes. Oh.
Page 1 smacks you in the face. So I'm like this. I'm like, okay.
There's lots of sex in them. Your wife will probably like them.
Well, it was funny. I looked at her. I said, "Just so you know, this is what I'm reading."
Yeah.
There you go.
I have not this woman. I have not met this woman.
Yeah, I'm not anywhere in the story. So
yeah. It's funny though, because my clients. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I wrote those 2 books, and I did not identify any of my clients, even though the stories were all true. I made the names up, and I offended so many of my clients because I didn't put them in the books.
Oh my goodness!
And they were like, "Oh, how come he got a line, and I got a line, and he got a whole chapter?" So I had to write a note of everyone I'd offended, and then in the second book, make sure I wrote about it.
That's so funny.
It's so funny. Men in their egos never fails to amaze me.
And do you have more books in you?
I do. I'm working on one. I haven't sold the deal. I haven't got signed and sealed the deal, so it's very early stages yet. But yeah, I'm working on a TV show as well. My life rights, but a film company here in Australia. So I'm co-creator.
That's exciting. I'm going to have to find a way to get a hold of that to watch, because it looks like it's a dramedy, whichever one I've read. So this is awesome. I love all that you've done. Like, I'm a big believer that everybody I've spoken to, nobody's ever wanted to change their past, no matter what we've been through.
Really? Yeah.
No one said I would go back and change a single part of it because of where I am now. So I was happy when you said that as well. Like, it's who we are, and I think it was like our journeys are our journeys.
Exactly, and yeah, you're so right. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be, and to me, I wouldn't be sober if I didn't have addictions, and I wouldn't be learning about myself if I was just carrying on drinking. Like, I'm really glad. In some ways, I'm glad I am a problem drinker, alcoholic, whatever you want to call it, because I've experienced what it's like to be healthy and sober and to have a program. And like you said earlier, I think most people should have a program. Everyone could do a 12-step program.
I think everybody should have a program. I think the greatest marketing that therapists and social workers can do is put billboards up and say, "Hey, you reading this, call me." Like, we get our hair done, we get our teeth checked, we get everything done and checked, but we don't get our head checked. Like, we don't talk about that stuff, because there's so many things. Listen, my parents, God, I love them, but oh my God, did they screw me up, right? Like, yes. And I joke around with my kids. I'm like, hopefully I'll give you enough things to screw up that you can write a book and make money off it. Like, I'm going to give you financial freedom, but you're going to write a book. Right? That's right.
You've given them enough material. I certainly have given that to my family. That's my heirloom, my fucked upness trauma. There, you go with it and make a movie out of it.
Right? Like, this was my fucking mom. But again, that's who we are, and I think the stories we have. And when I teach fitness classes, I'm a personal trainer as well by trade. So I'll turn around and say after my classes, when I have big classes pre-pandemic, I'd be like, "Listen, I want to thank everybody for letting me be a part of your journey, because I got to learn from them, but they got to learn from me, and it was a great relationship, and the stuff we would learn. So I wouldn't give up any of that, the ups and downs, and an industry that was challenging but profitable, and this and that. I wouldn't change it, right? Because I learned so much. So I'm so happy you gave me the time tonight. I have one question. What would be your biggest parting thing to give to anybody who is thinking they're in that spot where they need help?
Know that you are amazing for realizing that you need help, and this is the worst day that it will be. It will only be good from now on, because there is so much support out there. And yeah, well done for recognizing that. And you're worth more than how you feel right now, and you will get there.
Awesome. Amazing.
You threw me with that one. You threw me with that one. I had to think about that one.
I had to, because you had everything else going. I'm going to put all your links and everything else in the liner notes of all this, so people can find you and learn your story and read your books and see your show when it comes out, anything and everything about you. So, Amanda, I want to thank you again so much for doing this tonight, this afternoon, whichever we're at, whichever time zone we're in. And thank you again. Stick around for a second, but I'm going to sign us off. Again, thanks so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right, this is Matt. Amanda, again, thank you so much. Rise Up, Stories of Recovery, Resilience, and Renewal. And I'll see you all next time. Have a great night. And
You're listening to Rise Up, Stories of Recovery, Resilience, and Renewal with Matthew Taub.